The elevator doors closed behind her with a whisper so soft it barely sounded real. Then silence returned. Not ordinary silence. Not the familiar kind that belonged to empty apartments, sleeping streets, or lonely hallways after midnight. This silence felt curated, designed. It settled over the penthouse foyer like another architectural choice, as deliberate as the stone beneath her feet or the amber light suspended high above her. It did not suggest absence. It suggested control. For one still moment, Isabella did not move. The air itself felt different here. Perfectly regulated. Perfectly cooled. Neither warm nor cold, but balanced with such clinical precision that it almost seemed inhuman. It carried none of the rough edges of the outside world, no trace of rain, traffic, concrete, dust, or life. Only the faint lingering scent that had greeted her the moment the elevator opened: sandalwood, expensive whiskey, polished wood, and something darker beneath it, something so subtle it felt less like fragrance and more like residue. Presence. Authority. A man reduced into atmosphere. Her first step forward disappeared into the rug. The sensation startled her. After the hard surfaces of the garage, the corridor, the elevator, the softness beneath her heels felt almost intimate. The rug was impossibly thick, the fibers swallowing sound and weight alike, so that even the sharp rhythm of her steps was subdued into something muted, hesitant. It made her feel strangely unsteady, as if the penthouse were swallowing every sign of her entrance, refusing to let her make a mark on it. She moved slowly. The scale of the room was the first thing that refused to fit inside her mind. The foyer was not large in the ordinary sense. It was colossal. The ceilings rose so high they dissolved into shadow before the eye could comfortably claim them. The walls stretched upward like the interior of a cathedral stripped of religion and rebuilt in the language of wealth. Stone, glass, bronze. Clean lines so sharp they felt almost ceremonial. Light fell in long golden sheets from hidden fixtures, touching certain surfaces while allowing others to remain in shadow, as if the room itself were choosing what deserved to be seen. It did not feel like the entrance to a home. It felt like the antechamber of a sanctuary, or a throne room, or a mausoleum built for a man still living. The thought passed through her with a chill she could not quite name. She took another step, then another. Every object seemed positioned not for comfort, but for impact. A long table of dark wood stood against one wall, severe and immaculate, holding nothing except a sculptural bowl of black stone that looked too heavy to move and too sharp to touch. Beyond it, a pair of chairs sat angled toward each other without warmth, their pale upholstery interrupted by bronze frames that resembled armor more than furniture. The entire penthouse seemed built around contrast, softness against hardness, gold against black, beauty against threat. And everywhere, the silence. It followed her like surveillance. Not simply because the place was empty, but because it did not feel empty. It felt watched. The arrangement of the room carried the unsettling impression that someone had stepped out only seconds ago and might return at any moment. Not a host, a ruler. The distinction mattered. Her eyes drifted to the art. At first, she only registered fragments, dark canvases framed in shadowed metal, a sculpture positioned beneath a shaft of light, a wall-sized piece composed of layered textures that looked almost like scorched velvet. None of it was decorative in any ordinary sense. It was aggressive, intentional. It did not ask to be admired. It challenged the eye, demanded submission, and remained unreadable unless one stood still long enough to let discomfort do its work. Then one piece caught her. It stood alone at the far edge of the room, placed where the light could touch only part of it. A sculpture nearly human in scale, cast in black and bronze. At first glance, it seemed abstract, twisted forms rising upward, all sharp edges and tension. But the longer she looked, the clearer the shape became. Two bodies, or the suggestion of two bodies. One kneeling, one standing above. The figure below curved inward, head bowed, spine arched as if beneath an invisible burden. The figure above was not fully formed, more a vertical force than a person, its features smoothed into anonymity, but its posture was unmistakable. Dominance, possession, judgment. One arm extended downward, not in mercy, but in claim. Isabella stopped in front of it without realizing she had crossed the room. The bronze surface had been worked so deliberately that it looked wounded in places, scratched and darkened, as though the sculpture had survived fire. In the kneeling figure's chest, a narrow incision had been cut through the metal, allowing light from behind to pass through like a blade. Sacrifice. Power. Transaction. Her throat tightened. The piece felt less like art and more like prophecy. A terrible thought came to her then, irrational and immediate, that Arthur had chosen this long before he knew her name, and yet somehow it had been waiting for her all the same. As if the entire penthouse, every surface and object, had been arranged over years not merely to reflect the man who lived here, but to receive the woman who would one day stand inside it and understand what it meant. She stepped back. The room seemed larger now, and her own body smaller inside it. Intruder, her mind whispered. The words settled into her bones with suffocating accuracy. Because that was what she was here. Not a guest. Not yet anything as intimate as belonging. An intruder in a private sanctuary built around obsession, discipline, and shadow. A woman who had crossed a threshold she could not uncross. Her gaze shifted again, drawn at last toward the windows. They dominated the far wall of the penthouse, rising from floor to ceiling in uninterrupted sheets of glass, so vast they seemed less like windows and more like an absence of boundary. Beyond them, New York stretched into the night in silver and blue, endless and glittering and impossibly far below. She moved toward the glass in spite of herself. The rug softened her steps until it felt as though she were floating. By the time she reached the windows, the city had already transformed. From this height, it no longer looked like a place built for human beings. It looked geometric, reduced, domesticated by distance. Roads became illuminated veins. Buildings became rectangular constellations. Movement on the streets below shrank into abstract currents of light. People were invisible until she searched for them. Then, faintly, she saw it, tiny movement at intersections, little clusters of motion crossing streets, lives unfolding so far beneath her that they may as well have belonged to another species. Ants. The word came coldly. Not because the people below were small, but because this height required that kind of cruelty. It invited detachment. It encouraged the illusion that the world was manageable if one stood far enough above it. And Arthur did. He did not simply live in New York. He lived above it. Above its noise, its weather, its urgency, its humanity. Above compromise. Above interruption. This was not a residence. It was secession. A private kingdom suspended over the city, close enough to command it, distant enough not to be touched by it. A quiet unease moved through her chest, but beneath it something stranger stirred. Curiosity. Dark, unwelcome curiosity. What kind of man built a life like this? What kind of mind required ceilings this high, windows this vast, art this merciless, silence this complete? What kind of hunger arranged a home like a temple and then left it waiting in perfect stillness? She should have wanted only to leave. Instead, she turned from the windows and kept looking. That was when she found the glass. It sat on a low table near a seating area half hidden in shadow, where black leather and pale stone met beneath the glow of a single lamp. Crystal. Heavy-bottomed. Half full of amber liquid. Scotch, if the scent in the air had told her anything. One cube of ice remained inside, not fully melted but softened at the edges, as though it had been poured recently enough to still remember the hand that touched it. She stopped. Something about the sight unsettled her more than the art, more than the scale, more even than the windows. Because this was personal. Not curated. Not symbolic. Not architecture. Evidence. He had been here. Perhaps only moments ago. Standing exactly where she now stood, looking toward the elevator, waiting for the sound of its ascent. The thought altered the room immediately. No longer silent in the abstract, but paused. Interrupted. Holding the shape of him in its emptiness. Beside the glass, a book lay open on the table. Not displayed. Used. Its spine faced upward, pages spread, abandoned mid-thought. She did not move close enough to read the title. She did not need to. The image itself was enough. He had not merely passed through this room. He had inhabited it. Sat here. Read here. Drank here. Waited here. Watched the door. A pulse of awareness moved through her. Had he imagined this moment? Her stepping out of the elevator alone, hesitant, dressed in crimson like a bruise against all this clinical grandeur? Had he stood near the window with his drink and calculated how long she would remain still before curiosity overcame fear? Had he designed even this, her solitude, her first impression, the exact balance of intimidation and invitation? The possibility should have frightened her more than it did. Instead, it pulled her deeper into that dangerous curiosity, that gathering sense that the man behind this fortress of glass and gold could not be understood in ordinary ways. Fear remained, yes, cold and undeniable, but it no longer stood alone. Something else had joined it. A dark pull. The desire not only to survive his world, but to decipher it. She hated that feeling immediately, yet it remained. She looked once more around the penthouse, at the intimidating grandeur of it, at the shadows arranged so carefully beside light, at the impossible calm of a space built to dominate rather than comfort. Haunted luxury, she thought. That was what this place was. Not dead, not empty, but inhabited by a will so strong it lingered in every material choice. The silence shifted. Or perhaps she only imagined it. But suddenly she had the unmistakable sensation that she was no longer alone in the sanctuary, even if she could not yet prove it. Her breath slowed. Her spine straightened. Every nerve in her body sharpened. She stood very still beside the half-finished scotch, suspended between instinct and fascination, between the urge to run and the far more dangerous urge to stay. Because somewhere inside this museum of shadows was the man who had built it. And for the first time since entering his world, fear was no longer the only thing she felt. And then, something changed. The silence was no longer empty. She wasn't alone anymore. And this time, she didn't need to turn around to know. He was there,